welcome to today's episode of Group Therapy Podcast. Today we have from the darkness, the endless void, I guess, the Mother Endless herself, professional wrestler, Mother Endless. Mother, tell us about yourself.
Well, if you are unaware of me, I have always existed. It may just be now, at this very moment, that you have become aware of me. And from here on out, everything in your life will be viewed from a different perspective, because that indeed is what Mother Endless is here to do. Whether it be to show my opponent the other side of pain, or take my audience members on a journey that they could never go on themselves. I am here to expand your mind and show you the lessons of the way.
So how did the Mother come from teaching people the path and the way to becoming a professional wrestler?
These things existed congruently with one another. You see, the path is the way of a warrior, and that which we strive to be. You may be familiar with the idea of an Ubermensch. We are here to become the best pinnacle of existence that any being could be. And I find the path through pain is a very effective path. Pain, as you know, is a very effective teacher. So we follow the ways of pain. We follow the path and the teachings that it gives so that we may find wisdom in combat, in the squared circle.
So that's how you got into deathmatch wrestling, is that you want to teach these people the path and the way of the warrior.
It is not only for me to teach, but also for me to learn, because I walk the path just as all of the other warriors who step into the squared circle. Not everyone realizes that they may be on this path, on this journey, but each individual that steps into the ring, I choose to treat with the respect of a warrior until they show me they may not be worthy of it.
So they show the Mother disrespect, and then you teach them a different level. It's nice. I got to see the Mother.
That is an entirely different lesson. You recently saw me travel into the middle of this country, far away from my own current Axis Mundi, and a death match was on the schedule, but we most certainly had an interesting combat. It was not what was promised or expected, but Mother Endless and Lindsay Snow, codename Nemesis, would never turn down the opportunity to battle.
You and Lindsay definitely brought the pain to your opponents, and I'm not going to lie. I had some explaining to do. I believe. I can't remember if you or Lindsay threw a man into my lap, to which I was encased in blood from thigh to calf.
Forgive my laughter. I am very paying attention. That absolutely delights me. I really feel it is quite important that individuals participate. Our audience is just as important. You are part of the experience. Without the audience, there is no reason for us to compete. And without us competing, there is no reason for the passion to be awakened in the audience. So we value you, and I am so delighted that you were able to take a piece of visceral, actual piece of that experience a DNA level piece of that experience back home with you.
Yeah.
I apologize if the stains did not come out of the clothing.
They did come out of the clothing. We did not have to worry about that. I just worried about the ride home in case I got pulled over and had to explain to the police why I was covered in blood and that it was not mine.
Indeed, that is. Yes, that is quite something. I have certainly had to encounter the police a time or two when traveling to or fro, and it's certainly deathmatch is not something that quite fits their understanding of what an individual might wanting to be doing with their given Saturday night. So that explanation is generally, for me, usually quick. They don't seem to want to interact with me too much and actually seem a bit frightened, which is not an experience that most individuals get to have with the police. So I treasure that as well.
So how did, speaking of your tag team, how did Mother Endless come to find Lindsay Snow and to bring her
A bit
in?
of serendipity. A bit of serendipity. I had admired her work for quite some time. She is such an inspiration to me, the way that she works in the ring, her knowledge of her opponents, her ability to do exactly the right thing in exactly the right moment. Always to me was something that I looked after as I studied wrestling, and as I trained, I watched her work. And there was another individual that was slated to join me in a tag team match. However, they happened to disappear into thin air, and we called Lindsay Snow. I approached her thinking that perhaps things were not the right time. It didn't seem like the stars had aligned. However, it was one of the very rare times that Mother's intuition was wrong. The time, in fact, was right, and we were able to bring Lindsay Snow into Bloodstorm Pro. And that is where code name Nemesis began to hatch its diabolical plan. Because it would certainly be poor of me to relay my strategies in battle to the general public. But you can imagine the ideas that we have in store.
Well, you are one hell of a tag team. You definitely put your opponents in their place and taught them a very distinct lesson. You definitely lit them up viciously.
I appreciate it, and although I don't know that the entirety of this match is available for anyone to view, there are clips of it floating around on my Instagram and YouTube and a few other places as well. It is certainly something to see. And professional wrestling is, as they say, always card subject to change. So although you may be expecting a wrestling ring when you arrive to a venue, sometimes that is not provided, and the combat must go on, as they say, and so it did. And yes, indeed, those individuals, we did our best to combat with them in the ways that we knew how. And I am still absolutely enlivened by the experience. I never see experiences, though maybe not desirable, as being a bad experience. All experience teaches you something, and you can come out stronger and better.
Every lesson is a lesson. Every time can be a lesson learned, and it
Indeed.
yes. And I have to ask the mother how she became a wrestler of all things. How did that come to fruition?
Well, you see, it is a matter of, well, you yourself could probably relate to this. Many individuals who collect, be it comic books or collectible figures or trading cards, anything of the like, there's something about having the entire collection that's just, so unlike anything else. And to me, coming into the world of professional wrestling, although it had called me long ago and I did turn my back once, the second time it called, I felt that I had collected all of the other skills and talents and abilities and acumen throughout the rest of my journeys and teachings, that becoming a physical warrior was one more thing that I had to check off the list, so to speak. And so getting involved in it that way, I dipped a toe in the pool and found it to be so enchanting. There is something about combat. There is something about the feeling, the vying for control, the pushing your corporeal form to its absolute limits. That cannot be replicated in any other experience that we have in life. And so those of us who are strong enough to step up and be able to compete, it is our duty to compete, because there is always an audience who needs those individuals as avatars. For those who cannot, we need to be those who do.
Okay. So, how did the mother find somebody worthy enough to train her in combat?
This was not an easy task. I traveled from school to school. I had experiences that we will not speak of, but for me, I found that when I came to the place that was known for its ultra-violence, I came to the school of CZW. This was a place where I found I was able to execute not only that desire for ultra-violence and learn the ways of those who had gone before me in the ultra-violent path, but I was also able to put all of my abilities and hard work to good use. Although it might never be known by other individuals, I did find and learn quite a bit there. I would say those who were the most useful to me, be it Joe Gacy, I would say also Jimmy Rave, although he's no longer with us. He taught me much, and I respect him greatly. The tag team of the Rep, who is now our champions at Bloodstorm Pro, though I was unable to still best them in combat when we went for those tag titles. And I was sure, after knowing my teacher after so long, my trainers, that I could leverage that I could use that. And I was unable to, though we fought to the last, Lindsay and I. We fought to the very last. And last but not least, Gabby Gilbert, who is currently the head trainer at CZW, who is an individual who has made literally generations of wrestlers feel like they were warriors and understand what their place was in the world of professional wrestling.
So, how did Mother come to go from CZW to Bloodstorm Pro?
That is an interesting tale. How to best tell that tale is indeed the question. I will say that I spent many years in the shadows. Whether or not others were able to perceive me when I spent those years in the shadows matters not. Because what I did was I gained all of the knowledge, everything that I needed to understand what the world of professional wrestling was. And when I understood what the world of professional wrestling was, I needed to create my own world. And that is part of how Bloodstorm Pro came to be. You see, things at Bloodstorm Pro are not like they are everywhere else. Those who are familiar with Bloodstorm Pro understand because they belong to something. They understand that they are part of a special elite that has a different view than everyone else. What we do there is different. The way that you feel when you attend is unlike any other professional wrestling show you have ever experienced. And although watching it on IWTV is always an option, it certainly doesn't compare to the in-person feeling and experience. And I think you, as someone who has seen me in person, in combat, in violent, bloody combat, and has seen me on the screen, can attest to that difference in feeling and experience.
There is absolutely nothing on this planet like going and seeing live deathmatch wrestling. You will.
Indeed.
Some people, I know people that do not have the stomach for it. It is painful.
It is not for everyone.
No, I am friends with another person who was at that event wrestling, Gigi Jacobs. He was showing me. He sent me a picture of the big gash on his arm, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, he goes, I should have got it stitched up, but I didn't get it right away. And so it is the best thing is you guys made the best out of a bad situation with there being no ring, and you took the violence to them everywhere in the I would say arena, in the building. You fought near you fought in the merch area, you fought in the food area, you fought through the tables, and you fought through the chairs, and you took the violence to them wherever they were. And you were able to do that, and you were able to keep it, and you were able to take them past the limits to your glory. So
Indeed, and I would say that that in itself describes professional wrestling to a T. When you are in the ring with an opponent, anything might happen. Despite what you think, despite what you might assume, you cannot predict the next moment to 100%. So you must always be steeled and ready for anything to happen and have everything that you need as a warrior in your arsenal to pull out at any moment in to be able to just rise to the occasion no matter what it might be.
there's always a contingency plan for professional wrestling. Now,
indeed, and I would say that the training styles, the training styles of Nate Carter and the grappling, and of course Lindsay's jiu-jitsu background, are things that come quite into handy when you are in a situation that becomes out of control.
so did the mother have combat experience before wrestling?
Oh, indeed. The combat experience that I had goes back many, many years. There were many times where you might have witnessed Mother Endless and never knew indeed that she was there. Not in the realm of professional wrestling, but I have worked through many different worlds. So you may have seen my handiwork here and there, and you will never know. But, of course, that is the point. Much of my inspiration comes from the samurai, and for us to be not seen is exactly what we're looking for.
So does the mother have a favorite opponent?
Do I have a favorite opponent? I am not one to choose favorites in anything, and every time I speak to someone in an interview format, the question of favorites is always brought up. I never like to choose a favorite because I feel that tampers our ability to have an open mind. I look back on matches and I revisit them and I would say, "Oh, this one, this is my favorite. This is my favorite one." There are so many individuals that I enjoyed facing in the ring, and that I would certainly love to face once more. I recently there was recently Holodead was posted. My match with Holodead that happened a few years ago, that is an opponent that I would love to meet in battle once more. Our demonic, kind of vibrations versus one another certainly make for an interesting match. I trying to think back to ones that I would say were indeed favorites. Willow Nightingale, another just an absolute professional warrior. Nothing that I could say, about that woman that she should not be on television every single night. I love absolutely everything about what she brings. There is nothing that can dampen her light, no matter how much darkness I applied. There was just nothing. She kept coming through with more and more light, and the smile lit up again and again and again, no matter how much pain was applied. And that was something that I verily enjoyed. When there is someone's spirit who is as bright and as intense and as passionate as my own, it need not match mine, but if it can be opposite and just as intense, what an inspiration.
I could definitely see you and Willow being opposite sides of the same coin because
Mm.
she's very bright and you are the darkness to her light, and I just think that you guys would, yeah, I really do after seeing both of you wrestle. It's, yeah, I can see that. Um, do you have any opponents that you would never want to face in combat again?
I do, but I find that it is although I've never been one to lend to my gender, it is unladylike to speak ill of other combatants. And as I said, I respect every individual I step into the ring with until they prove unworthy of such respect. So I will keep my secrets as I am known to about those things. But let there be said, there are certainly many individuals that I would prefer never to step into a ring once more with.
Who would the mother like to face in combat?
That is a good question. And since I have had some time to think and be apart from the actual ability to compete for some time, I have really kind of turned my brain off in that way, where I'm not very focused on those things because it makes the craving for battle just so intense, and having not the ability at this time to be able to even so much as pick up another individual and throw them, and not being allowed to do that, it drives me absolutely mad to be thinking of myself in the ring at this time. Though when I do come back, individuals, that first one that comes to mind, the Dark Sheik is out in the Midwest and California region, known in Hood Slam, if you're familiar with Hood Slam.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with Hood Slam, you should be familiar with Hood Slam, so do check it out. Their style is something that is just uncanny, and certainly for those who are comic enthusiasts, you would enjoy that. So I would recommend certainly checking out that performer. That would be, I think, one on the top of my list.
So, for those who do not know, the mother is injured, but you are preparing and dealing with that and getting ready for the comeback down the road.
Indeed. So this is I took this corporeal form to the absolute limit. And that is something that, for me, I do not regret. It is something to me that is very important for us to test our limits and to come up right to the very edge of those limits and find out exactly what it is that we are made of. And what I found out after the ACL was torn from the bone that it was once attached to, I found out exactly where that limit was. And now I am made of not just myself, but of other individuals' parts, which I find to be just fascinating and delightful. They went in, they cut me open, they put pieces of dead people inside of me, and now I am repairing myself. And over these next many months, I will continue to rehabilitate it. It has been a fascinating procedure. Absolutely. Although my lust for combat right now is driving me absolutely mad, I still would not have traded this experience. I found it to be so fascinating and educational every step of the way, and it challenged me in ways both mentally and physically that I'd only experienced once before in my life.
So when the mother comes back, are you going to be still a tag team? Or are you going to be in singles? Or are you going to be both again?
It really depends where the wind of battle takes me. But I, cannot know right now what will be happening at that time. And I assure you that I will be more than ready to dive right into battle. So whatever opportunities come my way, as soon as I am ready, I am sure whatever those are, those I will jump upon right away. Although I am, as I say, I've always existed, so I continue to lurk around the dark edges of professional wrestling, and there are some places where you might be able to catch a glimpse of Mother Endless in the meantime.
So does the mother have a window of when she will return to the ring?
Oh, we are looking into the season of autumn, that witchy season that is so full of transformational energy. Seems to be the most auspicious time for me to return.
That'd be good because I will be going to, as always, I will be going up to Michigan to see wrestling because I'm from Ohio and they don't allow deathmatch wrestling in Ohio.
There are so many great deathmatch wrestlers that come from Ohio. It is a frustrating quandary.
It is nice because it's literally where I saw you was almost exactly 2 hours from my door to the building. And you were able to go and I was able to see you and enjoy good match wrestling. Unfortunately, I don't think that place exists anymore.
As far as I know, it does not.
It is now. I am currently
Holes and craters where I seem to go and destroy things. I did tear the walls down upon my exit, so you see what happens.
yeah,
My apologies, like personally and directly to you, but not anyone else.
that's it. Well, it was cool. I am going to deathmatch wrestling literally by the time when this airs, it'll be the day after. But on the 18th, I am going back up to Michigan to go see deathmatch wrestling at Harpo's, and that'll be my first time I've seen wrestling since I saw you. Because I've been out of the loop for a little bit. I had to get some crap together and go from there.
As we all do, as we all do.
Yes. So I have to ask, what does the mother do in her downtime while not wrestling right now?
Several things. I have 9 familiars, so we have all been, doing our best to train one another and communicate and, strengthen our bonds between familiar and the other. So that is one thing that I am very, very passionate about. The other thing is I'm training my rehabilitation and doing so in the way that only mother can, of course. So you can see much of these workouts featured on my OnlyFans, which I recently launched, and that we can get into is certainly a longer discussion in if you would like to. However, the things that I am doing are training to rehabilitate myself. So, walking miles per day, being out of this ligament surgery for only uh, approximately a month and a half, I'm already able to tow over 100 pounds. This is something that I work at very consistently throughout my day, every day. It is my single focus. It is my greatest goal. It is the best way that I can pay homage and respect to this corporeal form. The other things that I enjoy doing are reading, of course, the occasional comics. Indeed, I am very, very proud of the ability to now bend down and be able to dig through a dollar bin. That is something that I recently acquired in my rehabilitation, and I have found great joy from that.
Yes. As a comic book seller of sorts, usually I remember, sometimes I forget, don't get me wrong. I usually bring a milk crate for people to sit on so they can peruse dollar bins, even if they're on the floor, without having to squat
That is
down.
very courteous. More dealers should take this note from you.
I used to, of all things, I had a milking stool for the longest time from a barn. It was an old, and that's what I used to take. And then I don't know whatever happened to that, so now I just take a actual milk crate, and people will sit on there and go through boxes. So you talked about your OnlyFans. How did that come about?
This was something that I wanted to have the ability to give me more motivation to do the training that I needed to do. And so, in that, it may be a very limited time engagement. I assume when I return back to the ring, I may not have so much time to make videos and talk to individuals and have those kinds of interactions. But to me, it's so fascinating. The internet in general, to me, is very fascinating. I enjoy seeing how systems of individuals work together and how all these things come together. And to me, the platform of OnlyFans is fascinating because it gives you a bit of a window into individuals' minds that you might not get otherwise. Although I would say, for whatever reason, be it the title of mother that commands respect, or just my general appearance and demeanor being so very unsettling, that I do not come across the same kind of harassment that many other female wrestlers feel like they deal with on a regular basis. And to me, just that in itself was fascinating enough to take this one more step. So some of the OnlyFans is a bit of self-indulgence. It's a little bit of me exploring my sociopathic nature. There's a lot in there. I'm just, to me, I'm just very, very fascinated by this edge that society wants to ride. And as we spoke about earlier in the conversation, to me, finding the edges and the differences of where people's thresholds are is just really very, very fascinating. It makes me so very engaged to understand the differences in between people, and what one thing means to you may mean something very entirely different to the person next to you. And I find this is a fantastic way to explore just exactly that.
Yeah, that was I was going to ask you a slightly different question. With the internet wrestling community being the way it is, some can be really positive, some can be really negative. Um, some people look at women's wrestling at one thing, and some people look at women's wrestling another. Um, how does the mother deal with the negativity that people can bring to the wrestling community?
So, as I said, I don't encounter too much negativity, but when I do, I want to understand it not only from my own point of view and my own perception, but everyone's perception of the situation. Because you see, understanding something in an intelligent way is not just taking your own viewpoint, but understanding as many viewpoints as you can and kind of extrapolating the data from there. So for me, when I have some negativity come upon me, I generally like to share it with everyone and see what everyone else has to say about it. I find that there are a lot of fascinating patterns of behavior. You have many those would deem as a white knight who would come out in your defense no matter what the situation is, whether they're really even understanding it or not. You have other individuals who are purely there just to argue, and those are some of my favorite individuals. I just really enjoy getting down to a debate and the nitty gritty of any particular thing that someone might want to think about or talk about. Like I said, to me, it is one giant social experiment. So the negativity has not come to me in a way that certainly I expected it, with the appearance that I have and the things that I choose to do. But for some reason, I don't know if it's fear or respect or any combination of those things, or people just not understanding where they feel like it's not to be touched. But I don't find too much negativity, but it is joyful when I do find it.
See, I've said this, and I believe this deep in my heart, is when people have to go out of their way to essentially talk crap about you, you've made it. Because you have gotten into their head, you're living in there, that they have to acknowledge you out of their busy day. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm here inside your head now, and I live there rent free. So,
Um, Absolutely. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And that is, if I can, infect a brain in any way, that to me is 100% win. If I had made you question your day, question why you think a person would do a thing, or in any my existence has done that, then I feel I have done my job here.
it's fun. I like being able to have the internet and talking wrestling with people and being able to, as someone who grew up on wrestling and who's loved wrestling pretty much their entire life, and going, but you'll get the little bit of people who have got to be negative, and I look at them as you know almost as humor, because if they are so negative with their lives that they have to take out their negativity because they're upset that a woman is in a death match against a man, or a woman has taken a man's title or something like that. I think that's sad and funny, because it's it's a sport, and you're gonna have ups and downs. You're gonna have what is the saying?
Yes, and I mean, I would say, would we look at, I always compare what we do in professional wrestling to the battles that were held in the Colosseum. And if you were to say that a woman should not fight against a man, well, why should a man fight against a lion? Clearly, the lion has the advantage. If the man is unarmed, like, that's just cut and dry.
Yes.
We know what the end will be. We know what will happen. And when we talk about intergender wrestling, I always have to, go down that road in particular. I think that for me, it was very important to become as strong and, be able to compete in the way that a man my size would. I don't feel that there should be a pass for a woman I feel that all genders, regardless of how you come to the table, if you are stepping into the squared circle and bat with other individuals who are in a relative height and weight to you, and otherwise, sometimes we do things outside of our heights and weights, which are decidedly not the best choices on our part, but we do them anyway because we might have something to prove or who know what might be going on. But I think, the important thing to note there is that if individuals train as hard as others, then there's no reason why they should be excluded from combat, be it one way or another. Like, I don't believe that a man should be looked down upon for engaging in combat with a woman who is within a relative size and stature. To me, there is no difference there when it comes down to it. If I should be so frank, as they say, sexuality is all just us getting together, rubbing our parts together and trying to have a good time. And if we can get over that part, then everything else becomes quite simple.
Well, you and Lindsay both are shorter than I am, but you guys would destroy me in a ring. There's no, I would never have a chance. And it's simple fact that you guys would destroy me. Um, so so I'm thinking about this now, and I know this is bad because I should have asked this earlier. Um, the fact that you're now in deathmatch wrestling, who inspired you to take up the ring, to step into the ring and become a wrestler?
Goodness gracious, that's a good question. I don't know that there's any singular being that I can say would be the person that really pulled the trigger on it, because pro wrestling really sought me out. It sought me out once quite many years ago, and as I had said early in the conversation, it was not feasible at that time, and so I turned my back on that opportunity. And when it came back and called to me once more, the rest of things had coalesced in a way that I was able now to take the time that I felt was necessary to train and become the warrior that I am today in order to feel competent as a competitor in the ring. There were most certainly many people along the way that helped to inspire me, and there are certain wrestlers indeed that are ones that I am much favored to watch. Adrian Street, Sherry Martel, Penta. I think there's a quite obvious influence from a couple of those individuals right there that you see, reflected in me, that inspired me. But I wouldn't say it was a person, perhaps, but more a matter of an aligning of circumstances that allowed me to step forward and take the opportunity as it came into my life.
You just spoke of Sherry Martel, and I love Queen Sherry. I am. I always felt bad for the people that grew up knowing her as the more of the manager and valet.
Indeed.
Did not experience her as, sensational Sherry in the ring. She was so good and so underrated. And that is a woman even when she was quote unquote scary Sherry, I loved sensational Sherry, period. She was the best. And I don't think she gets the credit she more than deserves.
I 100% could not agree with you more. She was a pioneer well ahead of her time. Would we even be ready for her now? I couldn't tell you what she would do. Were she given the opportunities and the kind of breadth that the women do have in professional wrestling now? And I agree with you that she, her in-ring career was cut off quite a bit too short. And again, had times been different, she would have been able to be remaining in the ring and being an influence and being able to bring younger generations into the way that she was able to do things that were just so incredibly different. And I watch it quite often. I feel she was one of those bridges back. Of course, she was trained by mullahs, so this was something that was a bridge back to when women, although were so very few in professional wrestling, the matches were, before, I think most individuals who are of adult age and a bit younger now have this impression that women's wrestling was only this very talk in the early 2000s where women were ripping each other's clothes off, and like it was that, and then there was a women's revolution, and that was all that happened. And they're fully ignorant of their own heritage that goes back so deeply, down back all the way to looking at performers like Mae West and individuals that just were able to get in there and do things differently. I watch back to those matches often. The matches from the 50s, the 60s, and I really think that those are things that there was just a lot of different things going on then that are not going on now that we could get a lot of inspiration from. And I most certainly personally take a lot of inspiration from those times where you're watching a referee jump into a match, jump into and separate them because he's really he's a boxing referee and he's really actually not sure what it is that he is refereeing here. And those kinds of things are, when I see that, it's a great inspiration to me to be able to perform in that way, so that we are able to give the viewer that gift of that moment of just believing that they could be that person in the ring.
Yeah, it's fun going back and watching old wrestling. I went a while back and watched a bunch of old Bull Nakano matches, and she was phenomenal back
Oh,
in the day.
my heart, and generally my hair. Of course, I have my bun today, but she is the inspiration for the mohawk that I wear. It's a bit different than hers, but it is certainly that was taken from that woman, and not just her performance back then, but she now is still such an inspiration to me, and her discipline and the ability for her to be able to control and transform her body is unlike anything I have ever seen. She went from being the Bull Nakano that we think of in that iconic way with the hair, and then back to someone who again would blend into the shadows, you would not even notice, and then made her come back and decided to gain the weight and the strength and everything back just in order for that time to make that comeback. And that dedication to her craft is something that I hope for, I dream for, and that for me is such an inspiration when I train.
And the fact that she went from wrestling at one point to professional golf, and you're just like, I didn't realize it was the same woman at one point. I was like, that's not her. And
I said the very same. I said the very same when I saw it. There is no way that those two individuals could be the same. But again, those varied experiences is what professional wrestling is missing. When individuals have a much more varied background, some people frown upon individuals who may come from a professional sport or from another kind of artistry or combat background, but what they're doing is they're enriching what it is that we do. So we need to always respect that, and we need to learn from them whatever, and glean those little things that we can from them, whatever we can.
See, that's one thing I do love. I absolutely loved, and don't get me wrong, I believe she toned down a lot when she went to WWE. I was a big fan of Kana before she became Asuka, and watching her just knocking the heads off people, it was insane. I still absolutely in love with Asuka / Kana, and I will be until the day I die. But
I am so thankful that the things they seem to be letting her do now are getting her being able to get back to her roots. And when that started showing up, I was so enlivened and so inspired that she was able to kind of express in that way. But she is another individual who came from a very varied background, many different skills, many different talents, on top of her being able to compete in such a fierce way and in such an expert way. Just absolutely an inspiration to watch in the ring anytime she is there, in or out of the ring. She is just pure entertainment, no matter what it is that she is doing.
Well, one of my favorite things is that a lot of people hate the match. Is her and Suzuki Minoru when they had their match. Not many people know she actually booked that match for herself to prove how tough she was and how brutal she could
Yeah,
be. And
there was so much that she survived there.
yeah,
So much. It is something, and not just that, but there's many other of her early matches that you can go back and watch and see. There is quite a bit of things that she was able to survive, and that to me has been very inspirational as well. I think there are those of us who want to erase the gender lines and the boundaries in professional wrestling, and there are very little punches pulled. It is very much, and if this is something you want, let's give it to you as intensely as possible. So there is quite a bit of realism behind all of that, not just in that physical way in which you must see in the ring, but psychologically as well. There is a lot to overcome, as we could say. But those of us who have get the chance to sit in a very different bird's nest to be able to view everything else.
yes. Speaking of Japan, would when Mother's back 100%, would she ever like to step foot in Japan to wrestle?
Absolute dream. The culture of Japan, as well as the wrestling history in general, is something that is of a great inspiration to me, and I think is quite obvious in the things that I do, the way that I conduct who I am, and what I do. It would be, just a huge dream for me to be able to wrestle in that fashion and in that place, and what an honor. I couldn't imagine certainly tongue tied even thinking about the chance to do such a thing.
Well, one of the coolest things I was able to do relatively recently was one of my wife's best friend's children likes wrestling. They are big Rhea Ripley fans, which I can understand. But I said her, I said, have you ever seen Asuka outside of WWE? They said no. I was like, then I'm going to send you some videos. And I go, this is Japanese wrestling. Hold on to your butt.
Welcome.
And I get the because it's so Japan just lets it go. You would swear there's no way that these people can survive matches. Getting kicked in the head hard, getting thrown about, and they are in there. They are warriors. They are being professional. They are taking it to their limits.
Yes,
And
indeed.
it's so nice to see. And it's like I said, it's so watered down here in America when it comes to that. And over in Japan, they know how to fight. But don't get me wrong.
Indeed, and I feel that there's a strong, there is a strong undercurrent of individuals that, and I think deathmatch is part of that. Deathmatch
Yes,
community is part of that. That we will be, moving in that direction, and that the audience for that grows larger all the time.
I love seeing that they're moving. I like what the WWE has done and has moved away from the brawl and panties match, which I did not watch any of that. The whole thing back in the day was up. It's break time, so it's a women's match. You get up and you go get your soda and your popcorn. You come back. Now you see the women's matches in. You're getting into it. You're like, yes, yes, yes. And then you go see the indie circuit, and a lot of people don't know how many really, really, absolutely awesome women wrestlers there are on the indie circuits, who I don't believe get there just because they're not in the WWE, they're not in the AEW, which is really nice when they pop up in AEW because AEW knows and they see the indies and they bring them in, even if it's for a match here and there. But they do, and they use them properly, and it's so nice to see. But yes, oh my god, there's so many really, really, really good women's wrestling out there, and I think people need to find it. And
I agree, and I think that there is a big opportunity for women's wrestling to change, and it has been changing, and it has been evolving, and I think there is even more opportunity, much in the way that it is taught, to be quite a bit different. I think that there is a very, of course it is still a male dominated field.
yeah,
That is something that we cannot avoid. However, I think just in the way that it is taught, the more women who get into the more that we can, just kind of take that gender out entirely of the situation, have more women in there training. You've got women like Gabby Gilbert, like Missy Sampson at the Monster Factory, these women who are getting into, training generations and generations of these new wrestlers coming up with a different perspective and with a different mind and with the ability to communicate to their students in a different way about how combat should be had. It really, for me, it is especially enlivening. It is exciting to see these changes happen. But I think that there's the world at this point is open, and enough people's minds are open. And I mean, it is still a quandary, and that is one of the things that, as Mother Endless, I explore, is that there is part of us that has a very difficult time seeing women being violent from the thought of women being sexual. And there is just society has a very difficult time separating those two things, and so it makes a great many people uncomfortable, and that trickles down into the way that combat is taught to women, strangely enough. And I think that shows you some of the disparity in combat when we look at the differences in between men's wrestling and women's wrestling, is that there is, apprehension on the part of a male trainer to really allow women to fully release and just embrace the monsters that we are inside.
yes, because you can be brutal. I've seen you be brutal live, and I think that they need to let the women wrestlers embrace the violence and the brutality. Um, I've watched it enough that I kind of I don't know. This ages me, even though I say how old I am. I tape traded a lot in the '90s, and so I was getting stuff from like AAA, CMLL, and in Mexico, you had the trios and stuff like that, and you'd have two men and a woman on a tag team, and and they're just going in there and they're fighting and they're taking it to the men just as hard as they would anybody, and the men are taking it to the women, and don't. It's brutal, and it was good.
Indeed.
And it was something that you got, and it's sad and as much as it was, I liked it when we had Lucha Underground because
Oh, this is one of my most favorite. And I would say my second favorite, kind of TV product that's on the smaller side would be MLW. That I feel like has done their best to kind of carry in that same vein, where you're seeing some of those characters reappear. To me, that was absolutely just a wonderful way to present wrestling to wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans. I think the timing for it might not have been exactly right for the audience, but I think now, after the advent of AEW, that we would have a much more receptive audience to a product of that nature.
yeah, it was definitely ahead of its time. And even though it was behind the times in Mexico, it was ahead of the times in the state, and it was so good. And people, the first three seasons were the best. The fourth season was okay. A lot of people had left by the fourth season because they had to sign contracts with other organizations or whatever. Uh,
Hard subject to change.
Cards subject to change. Yes, it's one of the only bad things about. Although I have talked to people who have worked in that did work in Lucha Underground, and some of them absolutely loved their time in Lucha Underground. Some people hated their time in Lucha Underground, but they liked it, but they didn't because of the contracts they had to sign, which was unfortunate. And I think that's what kind of hurt.
I've heard things of that nature as well.
It's
And that is unfortunate parts of mixing your passions with business
yes,
is that having to do that. Sometimes there are unfortunate sacrifices that you have to make.
it is an absolute. I don't know. I discovered it a little late. I don't think I came in I think I came in the middle of the first season, but when I got watching it, I was like, oh, I'm done. This is my thing now. And
And I think also for individuals who are fans of comic book or
oh,
fantasy and those other realms, it is just the perfect entryway into the world of professional wrestling.
yes, because it had ongoing storylines. It had
Some
rivalries.
character
It had
presentations.
it had uh it had Angelico doing stupid crazy moves that I'm just like, how is that man still alive?
Yes, I think it was the Penta versus I believe it was the Dark Triad. That was one of my very favorite matches, like of in wrestling of all time.
Oh,
If that is something that definitely to go back and watch, I just absolutely love the way it was presented and the it was executed and everything about it was just perfect.
they made Penta the monster he should have been. That he
Indeed,
could
indeed.
be again. Oh man, it's watching these guys and Montanza and for those who do not know is Jeff Cobb, uh, who's still a monster. I don't care what anybody says about that man.
Absolutely, and I want to see. I always, and since he was on there, I have followed his journey and just want to see more of him everywhere.
He is such, and the worst part about it, he's such a good dude. But he should be a monster, and the fact that he is not the man at some organization is just a tragedy. But they knew they had everything, and some of those tag teams were phenomenal. Some of the just the way they did everything was great over there. And for those who don't know, you can go to the El Rey Network on the Roku channel and find the whole episodes of Lucha Underground. Tell people where to go. Um, it's I'm going to say it is an absolute honor to have you on my show. You are such a great guest. I cannot wait till you get back in the ring and I can see you again. And you are, you are taking the brutality to everybody. You do. You're an equal opportunity brutalist.
Indeed, and I think you've got it right there. Anyone who wants to have got it for you.
Yeah. Um. So, before we get ready to go, I need to ask, where can people find Mother Endless at?
Well, of course, there is the new platform of OnlyFans, Mother Endless on OnlyFans. If you would like to chat with me, Instagram, you can find me on Instagram. You can just Google me, Mother Endless, and I will pop up. Should you like to encounter me in the flesh, I will next be appearing February 24th in Williamstown, New Jersey for Bloodstorm Pro versus New South. And then next, I will be at AWA in Southern Maryland on March 30th for March Madness, where I will be providing commentary. So please do come out, support, join my OnlyFans so that you can support my rehabilitation of my strength so I can get back into the ring and start picking people up and throwing them down and punching things and kicking things, because if I don't, I'm going to lose my ever-loving mind.
So, where can we get Mother Endless merchandise?
Merchandise you can find on Pro Wrestling Tees. I also will offer it occasionally, some exclusive merchandise on my Instagram or on my OnlyFans as well.
Well, it has been an honor to have you on the show. As always, I can't wait to see you again, live and in person. And know that I will be spreading the word of Mother Endless out there to everybody. And we will be presenting you to a whole new group of people, hopefully, who've never seen you before, and who will go find you and be amazed at your proficiency in the ring.
Gratitude, as always, for all of your generosity.
You're welcome.